Oops, got to turn it again.
Get out in here.
All right. I think we're up.
Yeah, I think it's on.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome to our very, very first Q&A. We've got some special guests in the building with us, obviously, for this episode, so it should be a lot of fun. All right, guys, so we're obviously here celebrating a really big milestone for us here on this channel, and it's our 100,000 subscriber. Hit it on Friday, and couldn't be more thankful for you guys, which is why I'm wearing my thank you to go shirt here. Want everybody here to leave today's episode feeling appreciated because we just couldn't have done it without any of you. If you're not yet a subscriber to the channel, certainly recommend considering subscribing. We've got a lot of terrific content here on this channel, and we're going to continue to expand that here on today's episode with our guests. I'd like to just kind of go down the panel here. We are going to invite you guys, as you have questions, to just blurt them out. We're going to try and stick around as long as we can. Miss Kellyanne, my beautiful woman here, is probably going to have to be the first to leave, but we're going to do everything we can to address questions related to entrepreneurship, questions related to real estate, questions related to borrowing, questions related to banking, leverage, paying off debt. And we've got a list of questions here that you guys have submitted as well. So we're going to get through as many as possible. My name is Matthew Pillmore. We'll kind of kick things off with that. I'm the president of a company called VIP Financial Education. We've been running this channel now for six years, seriously, for about 6 years. I think the first year, 2011 to 2012, I don't even know if we uploaded anything. Uploaded about 60 videos between 2012 until 2016, December of 2016, very end of that year. And then from 2017 until now, we've uploaded something in the neighborhood of 165 some odd videos. Been a very, 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 very busy year and a half for us, and we've grown by 90,000+ subscribers over that period of time. So really remarkable. We didn't have any clue that we would be here this quickly, and we're now looking forward to the 250,000 subscriber point. So thank you so much for your contribution there as well. Guys, let's just go ahead and dive in with it. I'd like to go down the panel here and just get to know everybody that's sitting here. On my right, we've got Mr. Kevin Amilsh. Kevin is an entrepreneur, has had a tremendous amount of success. And Kevin, why don't you just kind of give everybody your backstory as it pertains to entrepreneurship and real estate?
Yeah, so I started my first real estate company when I was very young. I bought my first house when I was just turning 21. 23, I had moved out of that one and kept it as a rental. So I was a real estate investor when I was 23 years old. Started buying a house or two a month and did that for years. You know, I really like the financing side. You know, Matt, and you and I talk about this quite a bit. I like the money and the financing. So I ended up starting a private money lending company here in Denver, Pine Financial Group. We started that in 2008, and now we're lending in 3 different states, and we're growing. We do, 160, 170 loans a year. And then on my real estate side, I still have the real estate investment company. I'm developing some townhomes. I've developed some mixed use land, and I got a bunch of rental properties.
So we've done a little bit of everything here, guys. Wealth of information. You can also find Kevin on the new 100% real estate investing loan class we did here on the YouTube channel, right here from Kevin's house. So next in line, and certainly the top of my list, no offense, Kevin, we've got Kellyanne Zielinski. Kellyanne and I have been life partners now for almost 2 years, and we live together. We coach each other. She is single-handedly the most influential person in my life and in my business. So, Kellyanne, why don't you just kind of give everybody the scoop? I know we've talked briefly about her business here on this channel as well, so if you guys haven't caught those videos, make sure you check those out as well. But give everybody who's seeing you for the first time a little background on how you got to where you are.
Sure. So hi, everybody, and hi, everyone that has seen me before. I appreciate you all letting me be on the channel and being so welcoming. I come from a leadership and mentorship background. So like Matthew was saying, we do a lot of coaching and mentoring each other. My business is called Self Leadership Global, and we work with individuals, teams, and organizations to be able to support them both in their self-leadership and also how to be able to create cultures of self-leadership. Additionally, we work most of the time locally with business owners and entrepreneurs to be able to support them in increasing their influence, impact, and income.
And she kills it. Self Leadership Global, again, has provided me direction on things that I was struggling a great deal with. We did a recent live interview on her Facebook page, which you guys can check out as well. Visit the Self Leadership Global. Is that available to the public? Okay. Yeah. So check out the Self Leadership Global Facebook page. Also, we're going to be circling back on Kevin's YouTube channel. We've been pushing him for the last few years to really start on their videos, and they've really amped up their content recently. It's been really it took a lot of pushing, and they're doing a fabulous job. So you'll want to visit Pine Financial. We'll link in the description below. And finally, I'm so proud and pleased to introduce my final guest here today, Mr. Joseph McCowan. Now, Joe is actually the first recent addition to the VIP coaching squad since 2009. We brought him in just less than 3 weeks ago, and he is well underway with his training and has an exorbitant amount of wealth of knowledge that he's going to be bringing to our coaching members here moving forward. Still a lot of training to get underway to certify him officially, but I really wanted to bring in the one of our newest coaches so you guys could see the type of people that we're recruiting in order to work with you one-on-one. So Joe, why don't you just kind of share with everybody about your background and give people an idea of what makes you a great coach?
Sure. So I'm local to Colorado. I graduated from the University of Colorado in Boulder with a finance degree. After college, I started a restaurant. I bought a restaurant. Actually, I borrowed all the money to buy it, paid the money back in about 3 years, and then I sold it. I bought my second restaurant, built that up over a couple years, did that with a partner, ended up selling that as well. And then in 2009, got my real estate license. And over the course of a few years during the recession, ended up being a party to about 100 transactions. Most of those were fix and flips, about 65 fix and flips. I did that with a group of people. And I was either on the lending side or actually managing the fix and flip or consulting or being the realtor. That company group that I was working with decided to get into other investments. So I actually got my first job managing a distribution center. I managed supply chain and logistics, had about 75 employees. Company did about 130 million in sales, fleet of 26 trucks, so we were pretty busy. And actually back in January of this year, I decided that having a job wasn't exactly what I wanted to do, so I made a jump back into entrepreneurship and started doing real estate again and started looking into business consulting. I currently sit on board of directors for a local company and helping them underwrite investment decisions. And then Matt contacted me about 3 weeks ago through an ad that I had posted just looking for additional clients and offered or asked if I was interested in coaching. And it was something that I definitely wanted to learn more about, and the skill sets that I think I developed over the years lined up with what VIP Financial Education does. So I felt very fortunate to join the company and continue my education and help contribute to their future success.
Yeah, this is going to be super amazing, guys. Obviously, we just can't handle the demand that's been taking place. So I apologize again to all of you in advance for the 6, 7, 8 month waiting list. If you're looking for a free coaching session, obviously we're trying to get to everybody as quickly as we can, but we deliberately stay small. And that's one of the things that I think makes our business model uniquely special. So what I want to do is just kind of jump right into some of the questions. The entire purpose of today's training video is really Q&A. We haven't done one of these before. So we're going to see how this goes. We're going to let you guys kind of fire away at us. We cannot see the questions from this far back on the screen. We do have Mike over here. Mike Simon is my brand manager, terrific guy, and also may be able to contribute to this conversation. Also, we also do have Charles Roberts, managing broker of 700 plus real estate agents now, real estate investor himself. He's on standby if we want to bring in any additional real estate experience to the question. So obviously a panel of people who have tremendous background should be able to get all these answered in some way, shape, or form. And if not, we'll make note of it and we'll get back to you on future videos or in person. So first question is from, let's look at Milton Romero's questions. We've got, is it good to refinance? If so, when? That's a pretty good question. I would say that's definitely case by case. Refinancing under certain circumstances makes a lot of sense. I do think that as you're calculating out and reverse engineering the anticipated payoff period of the property, if you can restrict the 30-year loan and pay it down to, say, 5, 6, 7, 8 years payoff period, it in many ways would require reconsideration as to whether or not spending the money on refinancing makes sense. And I think it will just boil down to the costs involved. Even a no-cost loan typically doesn't mean no cost, right, Kevin? I mean, no-cost loans usually just mean they're rolling it into the actual loan amount, which means you don't come to the closing table with money, but most definitely everybody involved with that loan closing is going to get paid. So just keep that in mind. You're going to have to weigh the savings to the actual expense, which will, of course, restart the lending term, unless you're refinancing and shortening the term from, say, 20, 25, 30 years down to, say, a 15-year loan. Most of the time you're just resetting the clock. That's what we see more often than anything, is people going from a 27-year payoff period remaining and then setting it back to that 30-year. So if you're going to earn enough savings where that cash flow spike is high enough to accelerate and justify that payoff period being lower anyway, a refinance can make sense. So just comparing and contrasting the overall net outcome of the mathematics on a refinance will usually lead you to your answer. I do think at times that it can be a little more complicated if you have a lot of moving pieces, if you have a lot of different properties. There are also incentives, of course, by bundling together certain properties and having access to more equity, which you can then leverage into new investments. So I would say sometimes it makes sense to refinance. Less often than the banks would want you to believe. So I would always encourage reconsideration and a deep dive into the comparison before just jumping at a refinance to get a lower interest rate. Any other thoughts on that, Kevin, with your background in lending?
I won't take up too much time because that was such a fantastic answer, Matt. But the question to me was more about the interest rate like you went to. But what if you were going to pull cash out and do something different with the money, especially on a primary home? I know you and I disagree on this, but I really believe that leverage at a low interest rate and investing at a higher interest rate for people in their growth stage makes a lot of sense.
Totally. And I don't disagree with that. Let me grab this mic and then we can kind of have some dialogue on this. I don't disagree with that. I mean, listen, this channel is all about proper leverage. This is the fastest growing channel on YouTube related to optimization of your borrowing strength to get access to the right types of capital at the right time, but then using those capital accounts and reinventing the way you're paying so that it's under your terms. And I think that's the key here. Sometimes it does make sense to extend the payoff period because the leverage and access of capital is necessary.
If you can increase your cash flow and that creates something for you in your life, that's good. So I think recasting and going out to 30 years to improve your life sometimes can make sense as well.
I don't disagree with that either. And I also would encourage those of you considering a refinance to also look at the option of adding a second position home equity line of credit behind your fixed first lien versus just going out and paying 2 to 3% closing costs on a full-blown first mortgage refi.
Absolutely. I can't agree more. If the purpose of the cash out refinance is to make investments, oftentimes a HELOC of some kind is better. Not always, sometimes.
So let's elaborate on that just one step further. So part of the reason that we're agreeing on that, I think unanimously, is the fact that refinancing and taking cash out just to put it in the bank means that money is obviously not being optimized. You're going to have dead time with that money where it's sitting in a checking or a savings account unused. I see this regularly. People have large sums, tens of thousands of dollars sitting in the bank waiting for a great investment. When you're using a home equity line of credit, you're only paying interest on the money that you actually draw. So if you don't have a need for the money right away, it minimizes your outgoing interest expenses and maximizes your ability to have the liquidity when you need it, but it also doesn't cost 2 to 3% to get. It usually is minimal, even down as little as $150 or several $100s for total costs of acquisition of that home equity line of credit, right?
Yeah, and that you're talking about the primary home.
Right. This is primary residence HELOCs versus non-owner occupied
rental
HELOCs.
properties are a little bit tougher. A lot of times you got to go to your local community bank to get good HELOCs on rental properties.
Right, and they're very few and far between. You guys may have seen my recent video of how I lost $150,000 in one day due to Vectra Bank pulling a decline at the last minute.
Yeah, I watched that video, and I've tried to work with them before, and I
You have trouble?
Felt your pain.
Oh, really? Okay, that's good to know. So Westera Credit Union is an alternative that we're looking at instead. And actually, that inspired some changes with my game plan as I started to seek out mentorship on what I was going to do with my rental property that I was acquiring that 154. We're now looking at doing a full remodel on that property and probably flipping it into another investment into some property near downtown. So who knows? Maybe it was all for the best. Sometimes that happens, guys. You've got to understand that these banks don't become more enjoyable to work with just because you're banking a better way. They don't go hand in hand. All right, another question. I found this channel very randomly, at least it seemed that way. I was researching the infinite banking system, and I'm sure my interests in cryptocurrencies affected the recommendations. Regardless, I really enjoy this channel and what it does offer as far as alternative solutions to credit and wealth generation. I really enjoyed the infinite banking concept they explained in one video and other ways to build wealth outside institutional or expected methods. I think there is a good reason they have experienced so much growth in such a short amount of time. Well, that sure is not a question, but I appreciate it, Louis. Hey, Mike, is this comments and questions or just comments? That's okay. Hey, Louis, thanks, buddy. Yeah, the infinite banking concept is pretty extraordinary. I can't say I'm in full support of it for everybody. In fact, really, I would say a fairly small percentage of our student body would be considered great candidates for that system. I don't also consider myself to be an expert on the infinite banking concept, which is why I bring in experts. We don't have any experts on the infinite banking concept on today's panel. Certainly make sure you get your complimentary coaching session. If you are looking for more information regarding the infinite banking concept, we'd be happy to put you in touch with experts that can address those questions, get you pointed in the right direction with no obligations and no sense of pressure. Go ahead and contact us at vipfinancialeducation.com and put IBC in the subject line, and I'll be happy to make that warm introduction for you. So thanks, Louis. All right, looking at Sheila Fiesel. Does being added as an authorized user help someone who has established credit, but the usage ratio is high? Absolutely. So we did a video. It is a video that was our very first to go viral. Really, I would say probably first and only. We got about 1.3 million views on that video. It's called How to Get an 850 FICO Score in 45 Days for 2018. You can check that out on the channel real easily. It's just at the top of the popular uploads list. Very interesting subject. The utilization concept can be influenced by being added as what's known as a UA, an authorized user, or another term for it is piggybacking. And this is basically where a borrower can be added to a more established trade line through a friend or family member's credit. And as an authorized user, in many cases, you'll instantly, within 30 to 45 days of a reporting cycle, adopt the entire history as well as the utilization ratio of that account. So if the account had been open for 15 years, you would adopt all 15 years history within that next reporting cycle. And if it was adding an additional, say, $10,000 of availability with low utilization, that would have a really remarkable positive impact on your credit. In fact, I actually think the utilization ratio is better suited for somebody with established credit to become an authorized user because lenders are not stupid. The lenders recognize when authorized users consume the entire credit report. If your credit report has nothing but UA as the title on every trade line you have, it's going to be tough for a lender to take you seriously. It will look as if your credit scores are fabricated, and in some ways they are. When you have authorized user accounts in tandem with your own personal credit, it looks much better to banks. So I would definitely recommend using the authorized user technique simply to build your own personal credit. It is a good way to start off, and credit card companies are not as particular if you have good credit because you're an authorized user. So what you do is you become an authorized user, you get your credit scores up, you build your own credit card accounts, and over time the history on those accounts will continue to have a positive impact. But this one technique alone can have 50, 75, 100 point increases to your credit scores within a very short period of time. So it's a terrific technique. But watch that video for guidelines to that because there are some rules you're going to want to follow. Jacob Frere. Can you apply your system of debt weapons and real estate investment in Mexico? My experience with international application of our techniques is that, yeah, by and large, you can apply what we teach in general in other countries. Banking systems and regulations change from one country to the next. So semantically, there will be variations. I think really the concept we're trying to get through here on this channel is that of just simple financial optimization, being held accountable, or as Kellyanne would like to say, held capable to a better approach to banking and borrowing in general is where you're going to sense or realize value. It's just a matter of being proactive within the banking systems that you're working in. Charles Jackson, if a car loan trade line gets removed, will my scores go up or stay the same? Either one. Your scores could even come down if it's great payment history and the trade line is suddenly removed and that was positively contributing to your previous credit score. Your credit scores could even dip. So certainly no reason to think that that they have to stay the same. Any directional movement, if not static, is possible. Colleen Sarah, when student loans hit collections, should we still avoid paying the collection agency? She says that she saw our awesome video on dealing with collection agencies, just wondering if the rules are the same when it comes to student loan debt. Rarely are the rules going to be the same when it comes to student loan debt. In fact, I could probably make the argument that no, never are student loans treated the same. Reach out and let's talk about this, Colleen. Go ahead and contact us at vipfinancialeducation.com. Student loans can get funny, but there are forgiveness plans too. It just really depends on the industry you're in. Carl Woodington, can you discuss in detail the benefits of paycheck parking and lump sum payments versus snowball method? The snowball method is a very effective approach to a conservative, average, or ordinary strategy of getting out of debt. Snowballing, by and large, is going to be applied by attacking, in Dave Ramsey's strategy, typically the lowest balance account first, and then taking that minimum payment and the excess cash flow you were using to pay off that account and rolling it into the next lowest balance next. Yeah, that's a good way of doing things. Listen, it all boils down to consistency. Doing something over nothing is what's important here. So making sure that you're doing something is first step. Now, our approach, of course, of being more strategic about which accounts are being targeted first will, of course, over time lead to less interest being paid because we're attacking interest strategically. We're not just simply using a psychological method to stay on track. But I think some people need that psychological method. So I would definitely encourage either option based on your personality type. If it's easier for you to stick with the snowball method, then use that. If it's easier for you to stick with paycheck parking and lump sum payments, that approach will be more effective, meaning hundreds and thousands of dollars less, not hundreds of thousands, hundreds and thousands of dollars less over the payoff periods on many debts, and months, usually months, not years, of acceleration. So our way will be faster and less expensive, but not by a lot. The key is consistently moving forward with it. Now, if you're looking at growing businesses like us, leverage might be really important. In fact, let me ask you this, Kevin. Given your history in business, how has leverage played a role for you? Have you relied on leverage to expand entrepreneurially? And if not in business, how has it played a role in your real estate career?
Oh, you're not going to reach your potential as a business owner without leverage. And I'm not talking about just necessarily financial leverage. Like, I leverage you all the time.
Right.
I get advice from you. And
yeah, we actually just went out, had a couple beers, talked all about YouTube growth feels like 3 days ago, but it's probably last Tuesday, right?
I think that's how many beers you had.
Right, that's true. Okay, so 6 days ago, 3 beers. Okay. That's right. Yeah. So you're leveraging knowledge, you're leveraging your mentors and coaches, you're leveraging money.
Partners, my first townhome development, for example, I could not have done that alone. So we went to the bank and got a loan. So we leveraged the bank. We pulled 3 of us together for the down payment, and we all had to go in and do that. And then the strongest of the 2 of us signed on the debt. So we leveraged the credit of 2 of the partners. So it's a whole team effort. And then one of us managed it, and he got a little management fee for that. So we leveraged his time.
Okay. And we had a really interesting conversation too, sweetheart, about leverage that I wanted to kind of share with you guys today as well. Kellyanne comes from a very, very conservative approach to money management. She's always really tight about her money. And And you had an interesting upbringing about this, right? Do you care to share anything about that?
Sure. So, my dad was the saver, my mom was the spender, and I feel like growing up and seeing both perspectives, I didn't really have a solid foundation for what I was going to do and where I was going to go. And so, early on in my 20s, I was what I like to call a little bit of a shopaholic and made some questionable choices with my money. And then I went to the complete other end of the spectrum where I hesitate on almost everything. And he and I were talking about this. And so I need to know every last detail about what the end result's going to be and where the money is going and how I'm going to get the return. And I mean, if I don't have every detail, previously, before now, I would not have spent the money. And so Matthew's been really supporting me when it came to leveraging and understanding the benefits of being able to take those risks and spend a little bit faster, which I think I've been helping you to spend a little bit slower. So we've been we've been supporting each other, and
When you got it.
I'm like, okay, so you slow down, I'll speed up, and we'll meet somewhere in the middle. But I was specifically talking about growing my business model within the past couple months here. And I was thinking about gosh, where am I going to get this extra 80 grand or 100 grand that I'm going to need a year to be able to hire specific people to make big changes in the business model. And then I realized that I didn't necessarily need that much money. And Matthew kind of laid what we like to call the Gary V smackdown on me, and
Cussed her out.
And it really came down to just me coming up with all of these fears and all of these mindsets of why it wouldn't work, and just going back to what my mind automatically. It was my automatic responses. It was my automatic habits, and I had to be able to break those habits when it came to growth and leverage. And so Matthew really looked me straight in my eye and said, what is it that you just don't believe in yourself? And I remember turning over and thinking to myself, forget this. I'm not letting.
She went straight to bed.
I'm like, I'm not letting this fear control me or run me. And I woke up, and I immediately, that next morning, I opened up 2 different types of business lines of credit so that I felt safe when it came to spending extra money. I didn't necessarily need it, but I had it if I felt like I needed it at some point in time in the future. And immediately, a week later, we ended up getting, a $60,000 contract. And so it was just one thing after the next happened when it came to the money that I was needing to leverage and the money that I was creating because I felt safe because the money was there.
Yeah, I mean, she had a complete paradigm shift right in front of my very eyes. I mean, it was just conveying the point that the chances of needing the money is not inevitable. Okay, you don't necessarily need the money. And what I found is that by growing all of these aspects of the business, in many cases, you end up growing so fast that the money ends up being completely unnecessary. Had a great coaching session last week with a couple that we've been in contact with here locally in Colorado for several years. And they've struggled with some of this themselves. Now, theirs is a very admittedly generous spending habit too. I mean, they spend on anything they want, whenever they want. They make great money, a couple $100,000 per year. And, they've ended up with $65,000 in their checking and savings accounts while paying 14 to 29% in interest costs on $50,000 worth of credit card balances. That makes absolutely no sense. If you can organize it differently where you still have access to the $65,000 of liquidity, so when they're ready to move forward on an investment, they have it. But in the meantime, park their money against that $50,000. It saved $1,300 a month for them like that. That's the equivalent of 2 generously or healthy paying rental properties without having to deal with 2 new roofs and 2 new tenants and 2 termite nests, right? So at the end of the day, it was an incredibly important decision for them to move on that. And actually, Joe, why don't you share your perspective, because you were on that conversation, right? So what was your biggest takeaway from that call with that student? Because we really had to pull them out of their comfort zone, right? So what was your recollection of that conversation?
For me, it was all about psychology. They really needed to understand that there's the money in the bank wasn't their security, and that they were losing money every month in interest. And if they could just work off that credit card, pay those credit cards down, get rid of that that access to that money is still available to them, even though they had less money in the bank. Their income can refill those coffers, but it was really a psychology thing for them, and I think Matt approached it really well. It was, kind of like, let's do it step by step then, if we can't do it all at once. But it was a mental thing. I had to get over the mental hurdle, and if you can't do it all at once, do it step by step.
And that's really what this was. I mean, we had a conversation with them back in April. So the initial circumstances I described was what I saw in April. So she had come back to us last week for a follow-up to this, and now they have $13,000 worth of credit card balances. And guess what happened, folks? Their checking account balance grew from $65,000 to $95,000. So not only did they attack and eliminate 2/3 of their existing, or almost 3/4 of their existing credit card balance, but they had $30,000 more sitting in checking and savings accounts than they had during our last conversation. So her fears of losing access to this money that was giving her this sense of peace of mind and safety was completely in her head. And by just simply releasing herself of the pressure that they feel constantly by having this debt burdening them, it allowed them to go out and be more successful in their businesses. And I think that's a real key component to this, is when you're accomplishing optimization on both sides of the balance sheet at the same time, not just focusing on how much can I borrow in order to leverage into speculated rates of return that exceed the cost of the money you're borrowing, but at the same time attacking and minimizing the liabilities that come along with borrowing a ton of money and the liabilities that come with improper tax planning. Those types of things can set you so far back that, in my opinion, creating a customized hybrid for each person along the lines of not just doing one or the other of those, but actually doing some form of both is critical. And that's what you're going to find here on this channel more than anything. Okay. So guys, Kellyanne's going to head out.
Thanks everyone for having me.
Thanks for being here, sweetheart. Any questions that you guys have, please go ahead and throw them in the comments section below. If you have any other comments for Kellyanne, she'll make sure she addresses those as well. Also, check out her Facebook page, Self Leadership Global. We'll put that in the description below after we finalize this video. So let's get back to the questions, gentlemen. We've got another one here from Tiffany Valencia. Tiffany, when ballparking ROI for potential 5+ unit rental properties, so that's commercial, is it safe to assume that around 50% of the rental income would go towards operational cost, taxes, and improvements, and then what's left towards mortgage and principal? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it might be skewed a little bit because 5 units really isn't that many. But typically when you're going to analyze an apartment building, you're looking at 45 to 50% in expenses right off the top. And then the rest goes to debt service and profit.
Okay. All right, great. Good question. Thank you, Tiffany. All right, we've got a question here from today's video, Federico Pacheco. I hope I'm getting that right, Federico. I'm sorry if I'm not. Looks like Federico donated $5 over chat. I'm not quite sure how you did that, but I owe you an enormous thank you so much. That's really generous. Boy, oh boy. Okay, so what is the difference between union banks versus federal banks on home credit loan, and what is the opportunity for fixed credit? What is the difference between union banks versus federal banks on home credit loans, and what is the opportunity for fixed credit?
You think it's talking about like a credit union,
Right,
because they're
of
going to be
course.
regulated a little bit different?
When it's saying what is the opportunity for fixed credit, you guys know exactly what that question means?
Normally a fixed credit would be like a fixed term loan.
Yeah,
not
I
a
mean, right,
line of
as
credit.
opposed to a revolving line. So one is obviously going to be an installment loan, and one is going to be a revolving account that you can pay down and draw again. Let's compare and contrast. I mean, personally, I've had tools from both credit unions as well as your big box banks. I think that there are pros and cons to each, but it really kind of depends on the interactions that I've had with each. I've had good experiences with both, and I've had less than desirable experiences with both of them as well. We certainly enjoy comparing and contrasting the products of each of those institutions for purposes of finding what's available. So if I'm looking for something, I'm going to be comparing to every lender I can, not just within institutional lenders, but even private money lenders. We've relied on private money lenders in the past many times. And we've even relied on private money lenders that were coaching members that lent VIP for investment purposes. And we've paid terrific interest rates associated with that, even as high as 15% interest rates that we've paid for non-collateralized or unsecured capital. So I think it's just a matter of comparing every access you can get. The key is really making yourself look as lendable as possible. You have to increase your borrowing strength every opportunity you can, because in most cases, people are going to care about it. Now, the hard money lending world is not as concerned about the borrower, but is more concerned about the deal, right?
Yeah, that's right. Okay. I mean, we want a successful project, so we look at it all, but we don't care much about credit or income and that kind of thing. We know that the project itself is going to pay us back in most cases.
So what kind of a credit situation would prevent you from lending? Is there any, if you were to see a credit, are you pulling credit?
Yeah, we pull credit, but usually I'm looking for liens and judgments, although that's getting harder to find on credit reports now too, or potential bankruptcy. So if we're starting to see lots of debt and maybe starting to see some missed payments and there's a looming bankruptcy, that might scare me off a little bit, but bankruptcy yesterday is fine for a loan today.
That's incredible. So bankruptcies oftentimes you can recover from really quickly with scores too. We've actually managed to get scores back into the 700s within just 12 months of a bankruptcy being discharged, just by offering some guidance and suggestions for folks to how they manipulate. And a lot of that stuff's on the channel already as far as our content. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't mean though that you're already lendable to the traditional institution. A credit union or a bank is typically going to require somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 years seasoning from the discharge date. I've seen two.
I want to touch on this a little bit
I'd
more if I could.
Please.
You know, I did a video on my channel recently about portfolio lending and portfolio loans.
Okay.
I would consider either one of these bank or lending institutions a portfolio loan. That just means that they hold the loan in their own portfolio and they can make up more of the rules, right?
Yes, great point.
But their appetites change. That's the key here. So you don't just rely on a credit union or a bank for your needs. I really agree with you, Matt, that you need to call around, because the way these institutions are regulated, they have different buckets, lending buckets, and when one gets too full, they can't make that loan anymore. So their appetite for another type of loan goes up. Mm-hmm. And they got to stay balanced. They're regulated to stay balanced. So yes, it's important to have a great relationship with your bank. I do think you should do that, and I think it should be a small credit union or small local bank. Mm-hmm. But you got to call around. I mean, you're not gonna hear what you want to hear, even if you have the relationship all the time. So
well, and you may
shop for
also
appetite.
hear contradictory information between the banker and the underwriter. So please note as well that just because you're dealing with somebody up front for general details, many times later, you'll end up with an underwriter that disagrees with what the original banker had told you. So there really is no certainty as to, an approval.
Well, a lot of times there's no underwriter. I mean, that's what
That's
makes it
true.
so tricky.
Automated underwriting is kind of taking over.
Well, they approve by committee in these local banks. So they don't have just one person making a decision. It's a whole committee. And every loan officer has a title of vice president, but none of them are vice to the actual president. So I'm not sure where that name comes from. I have a love-hate relationship with banks. I think you absolutely need them, but just because they're a vice president doesn't mean that they can get your deal done.
Right, exactly. And you'll find some seem more anxious to kill deals, and it seems some are more anxious to make the deals happen. So you'll find a lot of interesting experiences as you get out and you're proactive with your banking. So Federico, I hope that at least answered some of your question. Make sure you chime in again if not. Let's talk to, let's see, Lissam Zarate. God, man, I'm so sorry on these names, guys. It's just not my forte. I've been recovering from homelessness for a year. I was able to rent a bedroom and just moved into a small apartment last month. During my homeless period, I allowed my credit to be dormant until I'd been employed for 2 years, and my score shot up to almost 700. Now I need to educate myself about investing and learning how to build some passive income. What should my next steps be, or what would my safest way be to learn what to do next? Well, that's a good question. I think that confidence is gained by competence. And I think that consistency is gained with confidence. So I think that sequence is really important, which means that in order to gain knowledge, continuing to consume education on platforms like YouTube is an unbelievable starting point. It's an advantage that none of us 15 years ago had. And so you're able to sit in there and even just something like this where there's a more interactive Q&A, you're starting to dig into what possibilities exist. And I think just simply expanding your mind into what other people are doing, how long it took them to get there, what was the roadmap they followed, that's really going to lead you to your next best set of steps. Now, I would always delegate as much of what I don't know away as possible. So as opposed to becoming a master, which has been said requires 10,000 hours, I would try to rely on masterful people. I rely on folks like these guys. I rely on Mike. One of the things that I became great at early on before I started this business, so this would have been while I was between the ages of 19 and 21, I was the fastest promoted manager in a high-end retail shoe outfit, full-service shoe company. If I ever have to look at another shoehorn again, I don't know what I'm going to do. But I will say this, that it taught me a lot about bringing in a great team. And so from that age on, I've always been good at identifying talent and surrounding myself with those folks so that I can lean on them. I would never try to repair my automobile just because I've been driving one since I was 16 years old. So just because I'm attempting to grow wealth, even though I've used money my entire life, I'm not going to pretend that I've done something before that I haven't done. And for that reason, I think the next best step in your pursuit to wealth creation is going to be building a great team. Whether that means you're supplementing need through hiring somebody's product, meaning, for example, Russell Brunson has a terrific product called ClickFunnels that I've always really, really enjoyed. And this product made him $3 million in 90 minutes at the last 10X conference with Grant Cardone this year. So amazing. I think he got Entrepreneur of the Year this year. Just an amazing, amazing guy. And he tells some terrific stories about emulation and allowing, those types of processes to help you carve out your own road. I mean, there's no reason for you to create your own path if somebody's already done it before you. Just follow their footsteps and avoid the mistakes they made. So what I would do is start putting some of those things into place as inexpensively as possible until you get to a point where you can afford to make a little bit more of an investment. And then you put a little bit of money into that and you continue to strive forward. If that requires leveraging to do it faster, then I've certainly never shied away from that. At one point, and I revealed this in my one of my recent videos, VIP relied on $400,000 worth of leverage in order to achieve the growth that we wanted to achieve. Now, a business in general leaning on $400,000 worth of leverage oftentimes would be fairly heavily scrutinized. I was heavily scrutinized from some of the folks that knew, and I've seen shows like Shark Tank, give funny looks to entrepreneurs that are admittedly in that type of debt. But if you were to look at a real estate investor who had $400,000 worth of mortgage leverage, no one would even take a second look at that. So I think there is some hypocrisy. And what's interesting about my business is $400,000 of leverage led to 6 figures of profit monthly. I'm not sure of any real estate investment option that's out there which would lead to similar types of potential. So for me, that worked out great. As somebody that's trying to build wealth, you need to figure out what your passion is going to be, determine what your purpose is, what your real reasons why are, in order to start focusing on what type of wealth creation you want to be committing your time and money and effort to. That's I think the biggest trick, is to find something that you can really, really dedicate those painstaking all-nighters to, and dedicate the potential risk of leverage if it makes sense to, because failure was never an option for me. I would have just kept going. And I have, and that's the reason. And now that $400,000 worth of leverage is paid in full. It's completely zeroed out. What do you think about the best first step to entrepreneurship, having started a business and growing it to the level you have? Because let's be honest, you never have to work again if you don't want to, right?
Right. And I was going to say exactly what you were saying. I can't say it nearly as good as him, but I was going to say the same thing about the team. And, we've traveled together. And I remember when we were having cocktails by the pool that day, and and you said you were really digging into my company, and he was really pushing, kind of how you did with Kellyanne, and I just got chills when you said that to her. It's like, he's so good at just challenging you. I think you need that to be successful, someone who will push you. And you did that for me, and you're right. I don't have to work. I don't have to be here doing this, but I love it. I mean, this is fun.
Right.
I forget what you asked me.
Well, I was just
the
curious
first
how
step.
leverage and just first steps, to getting into business. Somebody that wants to build wealth. Somebody like this viewer asking about first steps to building from scratch, from homelessness.
That's the whole Shark Tank thing. I'm going to make a comment on that, and then I'm going to come back to the question. But the sharks look at them as bad for having leverage in their company, but they want to come in and take equity. If you're successful, which we all plan to be, what's more expensive? I mean, of course, leverage is cheaper, and it's a much, I'll just leave it at that. It's a much cheaper way to fund your business than giving somebody some equity. So it's interesting that the sharks who want to be very expensive say don't leverage. But anyway, to answer your question, surround yourself with people that know what you want to do and that can help you. And business in general, from what I've seen, entrepreneurs want to help other entrepreneurs. There's
No doubt.
such a loving community when it comes to business owners. Now, there's some competition too, of course, but I think you're going to find more people want to lift you up than bring you down. And I'm a big fan of Meetup because you can find the groups so targeted to what you're looking for and what you want to do, and you just go to the meeting. They're normally they're free, and you could start interacting with the people that you want to be around. I think it's a fantastic way to meet people, and then that will give you the motivation, the push, the drive, and possibly the money to get to where you want to go.
I think that is a perfect recommendation and exactly what I would have said too. I think meetup.com is the best resource to get your feet wet by surrounding yourself with like-minded people in whatever pursuit you're looking for, whether that's, well, I want to become, the next best crypto trader, or I want to be a super active real estate investor. Those groups are everywhere. And one of the things I've recommended here on this channel in the past, if real estate investing is something that you're interested in, finding groups like one that Kevin runs, which has been one of the single most prominent groups here in the Denver area for many years now. What do you guys charge to participate at the happy hour?
Yeah, we don't. We do lots of classes and networking events, and there's only one event we do all year that we charge for. In Denver, it's $19, and we get 400 people there. And as we don't sell anything from the stage, it's all about content and networking. You spoke there several times. You're speaking at the one
in
this
October.
year.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic event, but we have to cover the venue. Otherwise, we wouldn't charge at all. We make our money doing deals. I'm not a coach. I'm not an educator. I want to help lift you up so that we can work together and all make more money.
Yeah, absolutely. So start with Meetup. Thank you so much for that question, and congratulations too for getting
sure.
off the street. I mean, wow, what an
great.
accomplishment! I love hearing that. All right, Mitchell Evans. My question is: after debt is paid off, what does the wealth building process look like with VIP in general? Normally somebody that doesn't have debt yet is going to be heavily scrutinized as to whether or not they're a great candidate for an ongoing coaching relationship with us, because the debt elimination aspect to what we do is the one part that is not speculative. Understand that when somebody has a mortgage and or non-mortgage related balances, the process of getting access to these tools and simultaneously attacking debt while the pursuit of asset acquisition is happening is a guarantee. We have no way to lose. I will be able to guarantee ROI. And if the pursuit of investing doesn't go as planned, we already know the value is built in. So normally we're going to require debt in order to consider partnering with somebody when it comes to the coaching. If somebody's already in coaching and we attack and eliminate balances, mortgage and non-mortgage balances, then terrific. That's all part of the game plan. That's what we want to be doing. It is our hope that we can inspire people to get out there and realize the power they have in their fingertips by building sources of leverage so that they are interested in actually getting after some investment opportunities. And when those investment opportunities are underway, then it's easier to pursue collaboration with your pre-existing assigned coach. So your coach is then able to actually sit and have dialogue with you about what your hopes are, what your expectations are. I'll give you a really interesting example. I had a gentleman a few weeks ago that was considering an investment, an expensive investment, $200,000. through the education on this channel, he had managed to get access to a $250,000 debt weapon. In his case, it was a secured home equity line of credit, and he wanted to take $200,000 of that $250,000 available and invest it into this acquaintance's business. So this acquaintance was starting an energy efficiency business. I think it was solar. It was a solar business, and my the coaching member that's involved with VIP has a water energy business. So his contribution was, he was comfortable in that space, and he was really excited about this when he came to me with the question. My initial response was, let's find out more information. And I began probing, as Kevin had mentioned. That's just my tendency. I want to understand what he's asking and what are all the details so that we can make an informed decision. And frankly, he had very little information. And he was, one check away from handing this guy 200 grand. I mean, he was ready to sign the line. After I started asking questions, one of the initial responses that he gave was one of defensiveness. And it was, well, I said, what is it about this that you're excited about? And he said, well, I'm going to earn 50% ROI after 2 years. So in 2 years, he would get back $300,000 for the $200,000 initial investment. It's a healthy, generous ROI, right? I think if that worked out, then wonderful. The concern I have is that it won't work out, right? So as the devil's advocate, looking out for his best interests, I want to ask questions that if this individual can't answer, I would certainly be concerned about giving away a couple hundred grand. And again, the initial reaction was defensive. It was, well, I just have this great gut feeling about him, and my instinct is that he's a trustworthy guy. And I said, listen, David, if I had $1 for every time my gut led me to how I play a blackjack hand, I'd have all my money back. So I would just tell you right now, gut instinct doesn't go all that far. I think certainly trusting your gut when you have a bad feeling about somebody can pay off big, but simply having a good gut feeling about something is not enough to make a $200,000 investment. And as I pursued and started to say to him, listen, David, if this individual was not in a desperate position, if this individual didn't have something about their business that was broken, they wouldn't need $200,000 to begin with. Is he asking you for your experience in energy? And the answer was no. And I'm saying, don't you think it's a little strange that all he really cares about is your money? If he's that desperate for money, how confident are you that in 2 years, he's somehow going to magically have $300,000 to pay you? And by the end of this conversation, which was relatively brief, he was already cutting me off and saying, I already made up my mind. I'm not going to invest. Now, I'm not saying he should or shouldn't have, but what I'm saying is digging a little bit deeper into the responses of some of these questions is a very important aspect. So I would bring those investment opportunities to my coach for a new viewpoint, a viewpoint that's impartial, a viewpoint that doesn't have bias, that doesn't have anything to gain or lose by offering, again, a perspective that comes with thousands of case studies worth of experience. So great question. What is the name of Kevin's Meetup? Kevin's Meetup.
So in Denver, it's a Denver real estate happy hour. We have the same thing in Minneapolis, although we call that Twin Cities REIA. So
okay. Twin Cities REIA. REIA stands for Real Estate Investment Association. And fabulous, fabulous groups. I've been invited to come and teach on a number of occasions, and it's just a great group, action takers. These are people doing deals. One thing I would recommend if you're pursuing meetups in general, first of all, join the groups that have the most members. Groups that have the most members are usually the largest and I think the most reputable. I would also say that if you're pursuing groups, again, not just in real estate, but in any type of like-minded group, find the groups that are full of people that are successful. And as Kevin had mentioned, those people are often extremely excited about sharing what they've done to achieve what they have. They like helping people. It's a stroke to the ego. So it's a win-win for everybody. And I would,
What's the motivation of the person or people running the group?
Totally.
A lot of them want your money.
Well, that's true. Ask the question. Yeah, find out what the motivation is of the people running the group. I think that's a great piece of advice.
I mean, some of them are paid, some of them are not, and they're all good. I would just know what I was getting into.
Right. And just be selective about the groups that you choose to attend regularly. And then the key is to attend regularly. Yeah. If you're not actually going, don't expect to get much from them. So go regularly. If it costs a couple $100 a year, that's usually a really good investment. And do spend your time with people that are doing the deal. Spend your time with people that are really successful. Don't sit around and hang out with 10, 15, 20 people of similar enthusiasm, but also the same amount of experience. If they're the same amount of experience as you are and you have limited experience, how much can you really expect to learn from those folks? So just be careful with that. All right. Another question, I think, from Mitchell Evans here. And Mitchell, hopefully we're getting to these the way that you were hoping. Coaching relationship lasts 30 months. What happens when that 30 months comes to an end? We have a graduate program with the coaching. It was always kind of our vision when we architected this that we could kind of push people out of the proverbial nest, right? And just kind of watch this beautiful eagle fly away. Well, I've learned a lot since then. The reality is I think I'm going to need mentors and coaches until I'm mentally incapable of comprehending what they're trying to teach me, or I die, whichever one happens first. So unless you at some point just stop caring about all this stuff and choose to go out on your own, my guess is that you'll benefit from having the support forever. Now, it doesn't mean support necessarily from just VIP. VIP is obviously one source of support. Unfortunately, I have yet to find any other organizations that are connecting the leverage to capital acquisition to both debt elimination and asset acquisition dots together like VIP. So it may be a little difficult to start kind of up-leveling and replacing VIP in those same subject matters, which is of course, the foundation of your money. If you're not focusing on those things, every other opportunity you have will come with more restriction. It doesn't mean you can't be successful. It doesn't mean you need a credit score to grow wealth. I just find it's a lot easier to have great credit when building wealth. So these are just legs up. We do offer a graduate program. It's deep discounted. And right now that basically means that it's 1 year at a time after the 30 months. We don't enter into another 30 months. It's just 1 year at a time. All right. Let's see here. We've got Frederico, Mitchell. All right. Susie, just wondering how I would benefit from a coaching relationship. Would the help be obtaining debt weapons? All right, a coaching relationship is extremely comprehensive. I mean, the way I've been describing it here on this video, I'm not quite sure how else to elaborate other than you are always in charge of the end decision. The coach is there as an advisor, as a guide, as a navigational expert, as a fresh perspective, as another set of eyes, as somebody that doesn't have the same emotional attachment to your decision that you will have. So I tend to experience a more rational evaluation with my mentors than what I have as the emotional first person viewpoint. So rational decision making is often different than emotional decision making. So Joe, what do you think about this question in terms of a coaching relationship? And let me actually just touch on the second part of this question, and then I'll give you kind of an idea, chance to answer the first more conceptual side of it. But would the help be obtaining debt weapons? So I consider us here at VIP to be specialists when it comes to money. We're not all things finance. I'm not providing your hard money loan. I'm not providing your next conventional mortgage. I'm not your tax specialist. I'm not your attorney. We are what I would call, the medical equivalent of a podiatrist for your money. Okay, so we're the feet doctors of your money. If we take great care of your feet, your knees, your hips, your back, everything is more aligned and better off and allows you to be physically healthier. So we're the foundation. That's what you benefit from when it comes to VIP and coaching. When it comes to the actual specialties themselves, it's the credit optimization, meaning general borrowing strength, maximizing borrowing portfolios. This is just your overall profile. This doesn't mean just your scores. You could have a 760 FICO credit score, have a tremendously shallow credit report, meaning that you have only 1 or 2 credit trade lines, and then go out and apply for something and your credit scores could plummet because you haven't sufficiently developed enough of a well-rounded profile. You could also have access to too many visible accounts where a bank looks at it and goes, well, we're uncomfortable lending another one because we see so much access here, we don't think you need it. So there are many, many different outcomes to optimizing credit profile and borrowing strength. Then we help with helping our coaching members understand how to get access to the right tools, what research needs to be conducted. We help you guys conduct the research on your own by providing the right types of debt cheat sheets, and you go out and you're able to to gather the necessary details to make the right decisions on those accounts. You bring it back to your coach. Your coach actually will help facilitate the decision and the timing of that decision so that you're able to move forward with a lot more confidence in your decision by the end of the day. So what do you think about the concept of coaching? What's been your experience in the past?
So I think that there's a lot of information that people are provided or can have access to on the internet, reading books. A lot of it's conflicting, or it's hard to decide where the truth is or what you should do. And especially people with their money have there's a real impact to their life with their money. And having someone that is your wingman who can provide logical questions, logical solutions, who has experience with money, with debt weapons, with acquiring real estate or businesses. When Matt was talking about the investment decision where the person was going to borrow out of his house to do what largely seems speculative. It's like, well, geez, what's worst case scenario there? And just thinking through that, having somebody there to think through that. If it were, hey, I got $100 million in the bank and I'm thinking about putting $200,000 in to my buddy's company, it's like, well, sure, go ahead. You can afford to lose it. But when it's your house that you're borrowing against, and it's like, well, can you afford to lose it? Well, no, I can't. Okay, well, then you might want to put some real serious thought more than, I trust the guy. There's more to it than that. So your coach is there to provide that additional common sense, the logic, the conversation, the talking. And then in particular, when it's with your own money and you might have 7 or 8 credit cards already, with varying rewards or interest rates, or you might have lines of credit or business lines or, several opportunities in front of you, and just trying to narrow it down and having somebody to talk to provide, a clearer path. I mean, you might have family and friends, but you want to have people who have experience with money, dealing with money, dealing with real estate, dealing with debt, dealing with credit, who can provide clear answers based upon a variety of experiences that they've had, both as a coach, but personally. For me, I would be able to advise with the investing in businesses. I've invested in several myself. I have had a real weird hobby for a while there where I used to read public companies' 10Ks. I just liked to see what was going on behind the scenes. I look at real estate all over the country and evaluate investment decisions for purchasing real estate that I never purchased. I just want to do the math on it and see if it was something I'd do. And then, I have purchased a lot of real estate, but those are my hobbies. So providing that as a coaching for somebody, I think that's the value that you can bring.
Excellent answer. And I think he brings up one of the best points in that I think people make a habit of inviting certain mentorship into their lives from unqualified people. Why in the world would you be asking your uncle who's been divorced 3 times about relationship advice? Okay. Don't ask people who are broke about how to manage money. Rachel Williams, I'm currently working on my score. However, I have plateaued shy of 700. I'm interested in buying my first home and base my photography business. I just started out of it. Okay. So you want to base your new photography business out of a home that you're interested in purchasing, and you're shy of a 700 FICO score, which I'm assuming would at least help in the interest rate at the very least. I'm assuming as a primary res first-time homeowner, you'd have some options available to you with less than a 700 FICO score. So that shouldn't stop you from getting your loan. But I would definitely tune into all of the credit-related videos that we've established here on this channel, because we talk in great detail about how you can be proactive about manipulating your credit scores effectively. So I would definitely steer you back to those videos. I don't know specifically. And it looks like you've got some specific credit score questions here, so hold on a second here. Oh, you're just modifying it as we go?
I'm updating it.
Okay.
Live here, so
Okay.
That's pretty crazy.
try not to get ahead. I'm organizing them based on the subject.
No problem. So Rachel, I think probably the most value I could provide with the limited information I have, and without having seen your credit report yet, that you're gonna be benefiting by visiting those videos and seeing some of what the general techniques you can do would look like. So I guess I'm not quite sure how I can help you with that quite
Should
yet.
I get multiple credit cards?
Is this hers still?
It appears so.
No.
Oh, no, never mind.
That's different. Okay, so I.
Inspirational growth.
Oh, okay. That's a separate commenter. Okay, so yeah, and I'm not sure if it's Rochelle or Rachel, Rochelle Williams, I think perhaps. So check out the other videos. Let me know in the comment section if you've already done that and if there are any other specific questions I can answer about that for you. So inspirational growth is this commenter. So I'm in the middle of building my credit. What is the fastest way to build it? My current score is 600. Should I get multiple credit cards? So again, go back to the videos. We do touch on this stuff. I think the authorized user technique combined with secured credit accounts is the fastest way to build your credit from that kind of ground zero level. Obviously, scores get worse than 600, so it's not that you have the worst scores in the world, but it is really kind of a breaking point for banks to even start looking at you, much less giving you money. So I definitely would encourage looking at the authorized user video, which is the how to get an 850 FICO score in 2018. That's the 1 million viewed video. Also, look at obtaining secured credit accounts, which you prepay for. And you've got to make sure that they do report to your credit report. Very, very important piece of the terms and conditions. So as you're reading through some of the highlights of the account, you're going to want it to definitely specify that it reports to the bureaus. Otherwise, it's useless to you. So you're looking at building credit. The more you can prepay, the more that account and trade line will be valuable to you. So the more that you put into the account, most of them have a limit. So you, in most cases, can't put in more than around, say, $3,000. And when you're actually using that credit account, that credit card, you're borrowing your own money. So them requiring great credit in order to get access to it is usually unlikely. And that's the benefit here, is that with a 600, your workaround to getting access to new credit that reports and helps you build your credit positively is to pay for it in advance. Now, when you cancel the account, you're going to certainly want to understand how the terms and conditions work with that as well in terms of getting access to your funds back. And oftentimes, those will include will come with an annual fee too. So just be on the lookout for that. One of the recent ones that I had seen that was a great account was an Open Sky secured credit card account. So you may want to look into that. All right, let's keep moving along. Crystal Vega. Hi, Crystal. What is the fastest way to build credit in less than a year? Wow, this is a common topic. In the process of disputing and paying off debt, trying to purchase a home next summer. Obviously, if you have derogatory accounts on your credit report, that's going to affect your overall lender worthiness too. You can challenge and effectively dispute almost anything on your credit report by just simply using the Fair Credit Reporting Act to your advantage. You can simply send in dispute letters to the bureaus. Many times these even free resources like creditkarma.com make that a lot easier than it's ever been before too. And essentially it requires the creditors to validate the information that's in the report. And if my Johnny Cochran rhyme is, if they can't prove it, they must remove it. They've got 30 days to prove it. And if they can't, then it can work out in your favor where it comes off the report. Now, that doesn't always end up working out permanently. Sometimes those will be added back on during a subsequent reporting cycle. So just understand that there is a limited level of effectiveness here. I think at one point, the quantification of success we had was somewhere just shy of 70% effectiveness of getting derogatory negative information taken off of a credit report, including late payments. Obviously, past due collection accounts where there's still a balance owed, that's more difficult to get removed than a collection account that's paid in full. Why? Because if I'm the creditor and you owe me money and I see that you're challenging the validity of that balance, I'm going to be a lot more certain to validate it and verify it exists than if it's a zero balance account and it's just costing me resources to go out and verify something that's been paid in full. What do I care at that point? So just know that you're less likely to get things taken off. As far as credit repair, you may want to just keep deep diving into videos, not just on our channel, but on others. That is not something that we focus a ton of our effort on. It is included in our coaching memberships as a free bonus, something that our coaches are trained on and can help guide about, but certainly not our specialty up front. If we can't help you in significantly other ways, then we won't take on the project just because we can help in credit. It's just too slow. We need faster results. As far as credit is concerned, you can build your credit within 1 year. Really just depends on where you're at. Sometimes it does take longer, depending on how bad your credit is. And certainly I would make sure to be probing my preferred mortgage professional as much as I can about what is tolerated in their portfolio of products to know whether or not there's any deal breakers in there. And I would do my very, very best to get that information before a credit report is run in order to prevent unnecessary inquiries on the credit report. So hopefully that answered the question. Yeah, please jump in.
This is definitely not my area of expertise, and I legitimately want to know this. If she's currently paying off debt, she said, and disputing it, is it possible, Matt, when you pay off the debt to negotiate in that they're going to remove it from your credit report?
Yes, and we just recently talked about this in the collections video. So there's a video that we launched a few weeks ago called Never Pay Collections, and I would definitely check that out because Kevin's question is a good one that we addressed in the video. Many times, if you're paying on an account, in order to satisfy an outstanding balance to look better to a lender, your credit scores can actually plummet, and that defies all logic, especially to us as consumers. We say, well, why? That doesn't make any sense at all. My credit score should go up, and it's because the date of last activity is brought current. So it becomes a new paid collection account as of yesterday versus an unpaid collection account from 1, 2, 3 years ago, right? So that seasoning is now updated, which looks unfavorable. It's not the balance that's negatively affecting the scores, it's the collection account as a whole, the trade line. The balance is negatively affecting your lender worthiness, your borrowing strength to the lenders, because if you currently owe somebody money past due, in most cases, lenders are going to want to see that's paid off before they're willing to give you more money. So it's a little bit of everything that's kind of counting against you. I talked about in that video, if you're going to pay the account, only do so with the expectation of negotiating that account for removal as a leverage point. You have what they want, your money. So before you pay them, you might want to try and figure out a way to get in somebody's good graces and say, hey, what would be the minimum you'd be willing to accept on this account? I'll do everything in my power to try and get that money put together, even if I have to talk to family or friends, because I definitely don't want to file bankruptcy here. And I'm considering all of my options. And by just simply using language like that, you're basically pointing out that you're not opposed to something like a bankruptcy if it's in your best interests, which certainly might give them better reason to consider taking that negotiation seriously, because they certainly want something over nothing, right? So great question. All right, what else do we have here for you folks? Brian, where do I put a large amount right now to earn best rewards over 10 to 15 years? Is that an investment question?
Yeah, that looks like maybe what's an investment vehicle with a horizon of 10 to 15 years.
So rewards being ROI.
That's how I would read that, yeah. That's a tough one to answer because, my advice, Matt, you tell me what you think, but you really want to invest in something you know. I mean, you can do really well with lots of different vehicles.
Totally. If you're asking for my personal experience, real estate never even came close to holding a candle to investing in myself and investing into business. Now, I believe that investing in business can also mean a real estate business. And I know people that have generated millions of dollars investing in different types of real estate businesses. Kevin is a perfect example. A hard money lending business is a branch off of real estate. But he's investing in himself and in a business. And I'm assuming that your business, your real estate business, has far outperformed your real estate investments. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, the hard money lending company produces a lot more income for me. So the developments that I'm doing in the rental property, that's just supplementing what I'm doing.
So my recommendation, and maybe these two can offer whether or not they agree, would be to find something you are passionate about, find something that you're good at, and double, triple, quadruple down on that. If that's real estate, that's terrific. If it's something else, I mean, you could start a fly fishing show on YouTube and start getting paid through sponsorships from, fishing rods and reels and other tackle and gear, and you may have commercials on your channel. You could end up making millions teaching people how to fly fish. So figure out what you love the most and double, triple, quadruple down on that. And Then as time goes on, as you start to perform, I found diversification from there becomes easier and easier. So investing in real estate now for me is easier than it's ever been before, because where I actually made my investments work for me in business and in myself have paid so much money that I'm able to more easily get out there and put down payments into it and get loans for it. And so things like real estate, where I can spread that wealth creation out, weren't my initial focus. So I would just figure out what you're best at, where you want to spend the bulk of your time and energy and resources, and go from there. What do you think?
I would say that for me, it would be a matter of my tolerance for risk, how much time I can devote to something, and my level of expertise in whatever I wanted to invest in. So as an example, for me, I had, when I was younger, I was about 15 years of restaurant experience. And so for me, if I had a large sum of money, I would probably invest in restaurants, because that's what I know inside and out, or real estate, because that's what I know inside and out. If you are fully aware of, say a gaming or an electronics business, that's what you do, that's where your expertise is, and you can find a business that you could buy, they sell on a multiple, right? So, and they typically sell on a multiple based upon how much the owner has to invest. If it's a business that the owner is actively involved in for 70 hours a week, then they sell for a 2 multiple of what their cash flow is. If it's a passive ownership, where the owner is spending 5 to 10 hours a week, they're going to sell for 5 to 10 multiple of what they're cash flowing. So it's like what Matt's saying, you're going to get 20 to 30% for 5 hours a week. If you're saying, I don't want to invest anything, then, or I don't want to invest any time, then, it's pretty tough. It's bonds, stocks, stuff like that. But that's what I would say. I'd say it's your tolerance for risk, how much time you're willing to devote to something, and where your level of expertise is. And I definitely would not buy a business that you don't know anything about. You might start one small and try to grow it. But I would look at where your experience and your time's willing to be devoted.
I think that's really, really good point. Really good point. All right. Bill Hop. I wanted to use my credit card to pay my mortgage, but my service company does not accept credit cards. Any suggestions? Well, I don't use credit cards to pay a mortgage, so I would suggest not doing that. We use liquid accounts for lump sum payments and paycheck parking bill. That's why you're not able to do it. Most mortgage companies don't accept credit card.
Yeah, the merchant accounts don't let you pay debt with debt usually.
Right. Okay, and Wanda Mora was asking about business credit questions. You'd like more information on establishing business lines of credit. How does that happen? First and foremost, Wanda, in order to get access to business lines of credit, you need to have a registered entity with the secretary of your state, or wherever you register your entity for that matter. And you need to have 24 months worth of seasoning behind that entity before you're being taken seriously by current underwriting guidelines. Now, underwriting guidelines can change anytime. So by the time this video is a year old, it's possible that this guideline will be different. However, for right now, 24 months worth of established history in business is a necessary component to getting access to some of the best and most popular business lines of credit. However, by opening an entity and opening up checking and savings accounts, you could certainly get access to some terrific business credit cards. Both of those in most cases, do not report to your personal credit report. So 24 months in business is key. Beyond that, just to enhance your general application, you're going to want to have an independent phone line for the business versus just a mobile. You're going to want to have an independent address versus your garage. You need to have a website. Social media helps. Most of these questions are being asked on the applications at this point. So you should plan on putting something in there. If your address matches your home address and your phone number matches your mobile, it's hard to take you seriously as a real business. If the bank is considering lending you a serious business development tool, then show up as a serious business. It's not difficult to get any of those things, and for very little money. It doesn't mean going out and get access to brick and mortar office space. It maybe used to mean that, but for the last 15 some odd years, we've been relying on virtual office space as an organization for our lending and borrowing reasons, even though our brick and mortar office space has changed many times. And part of the benefit of having that virtual office space for us, even while having brick and mortar office space, has been that when we do move, we don't have to go back out and change our addresses on everything. It continues to remain the same corporate address that it's been the whole time, except for when that virtual office actually relocated, which was a real pain. Now, with that in mind, that actually works as a perk. I would just use that virtual office address, not a P.O. box, not a P.O. box. You should not be putting a P.O. box on the application. They need to be able to do a Google search. Ours is through Regis. Regis is an actual brick and mortar massive office building where you can actually rent space, but you can pay a small fraction of the price to have access to the receptionist and have them forward your mail. So Regis is a great alternative. It costs something like $65 to $80 per month, depending on how much mail they forward. I would look at virtual office space. I would also be looking at something like voice over IP for business alternative phone lines versus your mobile. Keep in mind that if you're doing something free like Google's voice over IP, they tend to have something that says, please wait while we locate the Google subscriber you're trying to reach. Not a serious business. If you're going to have a serious business, do me a favor, go out there and pay the $5 some odd per month to get the customized voicemail message so that you can actually have a business voicemail. The banks will sometimes call to verify that you are as real as you're claiming to be as it pertains to your business. So those would be the primary techniques to make sure you're positioned well to get access to business capital. Now, the most, I think, obvious follow-up to that is make money. Make money.
You're talking, Matt, just about non-personal guarantee business loans here.
These are still personally guaranteed. The most popular debt weapons that I've gotten that are business capital accounts required personal guarantees.
It's almost necessary, especially for newer businesses.
Almost always necessary to personally guarantee the account.
Qualifying them and not the business.
That's exactly right. So 700 plus minimum FICO credit scores are still necessary. We're not avoiding personal credit to get access to business credit. We're relying on personal credit to strengthen our application process with business credit.
On the personal.
Bingo. So 95% of the time, we won't have that trade line show up on our credit. Imagine the power that I have accessing hundreds of thousands of dollars over years of acquisition of money that doesn't report, whereby I can then draw that money, put it in the bank, season it for 2 months, and it becomes an eligible source of down payment funds. It becomes fix-up funds. It becomes vacancy costs. But with 2 months in most cases, and in some 3, of having that money sitting in checking and savings accounts, banks will consider that my money and I can use it to invest with. So by not having it show up on my personal credit reports, it's not affecting my scores and it's not affecting my debt to income ratio, which is how they calculate DTI, is by importing all the trade lines that you're servicing payments for. Right? Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, although you really are supposed to disclose your debts, so there's that.
Perfect. And you need to do whatever the bank wants you to do, because there's absolutely no reason in the world that anybody needs to be even writing a gray line on fraud to achieve wealth creation.
You know, a lot of the banks want liquidity more than debt to income. So even if your liabilities go up every month, just having that liquidity in the bank goes a long way with some of these banks.
Absolutely. All right. Jermaine, you asked about continuing 30 months worth of coaching. Can you pay for another 30 months? We talked about that earlier. We do 1 year at a time after the 30 months. Are there any recommendation or recommended resources for building business credit to leverage an entity to invest in real estate? I feel like we just covered that one too. Thank you, Jason. Use trucking. Is using personal credit card to buy equipment for business a good idea? Doesn't matter. Just don't go out there and use business credit accounts for personal reasons and attempt to take tax deductions when it's not a tax deductible expense. You can use personal credit to build a business. Obviously, the downside is it's going to show up on your personal credit report and have an effect on your credit score as well as debt to income ratios. But my my firm recommendation is to keep every single thing separate, meaning I have dedicated business accounts and dedicated personal accounts. Even if I'm using a personal account for business reasons, I'm only using it for business reasons. And if I'm using a personal account or a business account for personal reasons, I'm only using it for personal reasons. And even though you can use the same account for both personal and business and then worry about the deductions later, it's just such a messy way of going about doing things. It's extremely complicated. It's tough on your tax professionals, your bookkeepers, and your CPAs. It's so much easier to just get out there and establish it the right way by having isolated accounts for each purpose. All right. Malik Fofana. Matt, I'm working on a startup right now and I need some capital to get to a point where I can launch it. However, I'm reluctant to get a loan in case things don't work out. What do you advise? Makes sense. Makes sense. It's good to have reluctancy. It's good to have a healthy doses of skepticism, healthy doses of, risk evaluation. It's very valid. You need to be cautious. What do I advise? I advise doing as much as you absolutely can possibly do with as little as you can possibly get away with doing it, and build yourself to a point where you're reinvesting the profits. That's what I would recommend. In addition to that, as you start to gain some traction and success, then you can start to look towards leveraging further. Most of the leverage that we used over the years was borrowed and reinvested after seeing proven concepts. So concepts were not in question. We weren't just simply speculating that we would get results. We already had results. So that was a big thing. I think doing as much as you possibly can with as little leverage as possible is critical. And as you grow and gain momentum, I think getting access to capital is very useful. Using small amounts, single digit thousands, I don't think is something that I would avoid if I was trying to launch a business. But as Kellyanne says, I believe so.
Business.
Yeah, I mean, we'd need to have more
Service
detail.
Business, it's not very much, but if it's a restaurant, I mean,
Right.
how would you do a new restaurant?
At both of the restaurants I did were seller financed.
So you leveraged.
Yeah, 100%. I never put in a dollar. I did seller financing, and basically I found places that were people looking to retire that were willing to bet on me and my experience. If I were launching a brand new business, you can consider a partner, but then you got to give away some of your business. You can do crowdfunding techniques, but there's pros and cons to that too. I think you're right. If you got to be willing to invest in yourself, and like Matt said, you just got to double down, buckle up, and keep pushing forward. I mean, if you got to have enough confidence in your product and your business to invest and borrow. I mean, you just have to. When I was 24 years old, I was $130,000 in debt because I borrowed the money to buy the restaurant. When I was 27, I was on the exact opposite side of the deal because I sold it and was paid off and looking good.
Yeah, that's a good point. And so I think it really just boils down to the specifics behind your pursuits as to the exact direction, but I think generalities apply to that for sure. All right, thanks for the question, Malik. Javon Gamble, what is the typical client profile, credit score, assets, DTI, etc., of a person who has had the best success with VIP's coaching? Yeah, so what is our ideal candidate? We see a vast spectrum. There are certain things that are in common with the people that succeed with what we do. Number one is at least $500 per month in leftover cash flow. That means after all expenses are paid, we're talking minimum payments on mortgage and non-mortgage related debts. We're talking lifestyle spending. We're talking living expenses. Two different things. Living expenses are costs of living. Lifestyle is discretionary, just things you enjoy, socializing, travel, things like that. $500 needs to be left over. And when $500 is left over, we've managed to quantify the minimum expectation of a partnership with somebody. However, beyond that, we also need to see, the coachability, compatibility. Personalities have to match up. If we don't get a match with personalities, we're just not going to do well over a 30-month relationship together. 30 months is a long time. And that's why I'm always transparent on this channel that we're just not a good fit for most people. Most people are not going to be a good fit for what we do. Now, theoretically, financial nutrition, much like your physical health, is theoretically a good idea for everybody. But again, just like I've said many times recently, 90% of people or more probably shouldn't have had a gym membership, right? Even though health is good for everybody. So we have to take into consideration that we're all very different as human beings. We respond to things differently. Some of us are capable of better consistency than others. So obviously, personality compatibility is of equal importance to that $500 starting cash flow position. We've gotten to the point now where while Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, I've got a mortgage, I've been fiscally responsible, I have limited to no non-mortgage debts, my credit scores are good. If they're not looking at expansion, we're usually disqualifying. So if you're not looking at growing your wealth, if you're looking at just simply paying off a mortgage and a non-mortgage collection of balances, you can do that very easily by relying on techniques like the snowball method. I think lump sum payments and paycheck parking become a little too advanced for your ordinary kind of average approach to money management. Just snowball that stuff away, attack it like you're being chased by wolves, use your extra cash flow and just get rid of those balances. It's easy. We'll come in within range of one another in terms of the actual mathematical outcome. I'm not fighting over hundreds or thousands of dollars. It doesn't matter to me. What I am looking to fight over is tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands and of course millions. And that's why doing something over nothing is an easy argument to make, because doing something will inevitably lead to tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands, if not more. Doing nothing is obviously just falling victim to a banking system that's built for you to fail. So I'm not going to sit here and split hairs over snowballing versus lump sums and paycheck parking, which is why most of the time that mathematical scenario is going to be a disqualification, because it's just easier to follow a simplified strategy. For somebody that's looking to expand, grow a business, build wealth through things like real estate investing, wanting to use leverage to create wealth, now there's a lot more moving pieces to that puzzle. And it's not to say that somebody with a 660 can't benefit from what we do, and only somebody that has a 700 and better does. That 660 needs us just as bad, if not worse, to get to that 700 more quickly so that we can begin to leverage and borrow. And so really everything else is on the table, as long as the intention is to rely on leverage to create wealth, but do so under somewhat extreme levels. Meaning if you're just looking to borrow $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, it's probably not going to make the best sense to get out there and pay someone like us, where we charge either our YouTube audience, by the way, receives the deepest discount that we provide. When somebody is determined to be a good fit, we reduce the price point from a current $289 per month to a $289 per month sales price. Those prices are expected to increase. They've increased every 3 or 4 months since inception of this business. So expect those to only go up. But right now, the sales price to our YouTube audience is $289 a month from $389 per month. Now that $289 per month cost can also be further discounted with a full pay price. And I'm explaining this and elaborating because somebody asked the question as to what the cost of the program is. So you can actually receive an additional $2,000 price break for the members that pay for the full 30 months up front. So I would not recommend paying $6,500 up to $8,500 if you're only planning on borrowing $20,000, $30,000. It adds a steep premium to the amount of money that you're borrowing. So again, it looks to, for us, in order for somebody to be a good fit, $500 worth of cash flow. Any starting point with current credit scores is okay, while we do, of course, like to see great credit initially because it gives us a jump start. We don't require it. And personality compatibility are going to be the two biggest things. All right. Good question, Javon. Thanks so much. Mitchell Evans, how many coaches work at VIP? Back in 2009, we restricted our total coaches to just 5. And Joseph here, Joe is the latest addition to our team. So we choose to stay very small. This is why the waiting list just keeps getting longer and longer and longer. So certainly, again, I appreciate all of your patience, guys. But this is partly why we're bringing somebody else in. We just started feeling so much pressure that we wanted to try and help more of you than we were able to without one more coach. There's the possibility we'll add more from here. We like staying small. We like having the freedom to turn more people away than we bring in. It's almost created this business model unintentionally that doesn't require solicitation. It requires identifying compatibility. It's a lot like the banks, as ironic as that sounds, right? I mean, the banks are in business to give you money, and if they don't lend money, they go out of business, but they don't just simply accept anybody. It's like an application process, and if it's not a good fit, the banks are going to decline, and if it's not a good fit for you first, and obviously where it's not a good fit for what we need, then it just doesn't make sense for us to partner. And that's one of the best case outcomes, is that we ultimately end up deciding that right now is not the perfect fit, and we part company as friends, and we wish each other well. That to me is one of the best things that can happen from a coaching session. What is the coaching relationship like? Monthly, or is there availability between sessions for unexpected situations? That's from Roscoe Burrows. Roscoe, thanks for the question. Another good question regarding the semantics of our coaching relationships. Yeah, coaching relationships are not restricted in terms of the number you can have. The most common frequency for our kind of best case study scenarios is about one session a month. I push people to get coached at least once every 6 weeks as a bare bones expectation. That's the minimum participation requirement. However, we don't think over coaching is necessary either. So about once per month is a typical outcome. Over 30 months, you'll see somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 coaching sessions, give or take 5 is really common with our most successful members. Every time you add a question, it scrolls it to the top, Mike. Just so you know.
Okay.
That's why
And
it's...
I'll delete the ones that are at the top.
Okay, cool. Is there availability between coaching sessions for unexpected situations? Yes. So we are an appointment-based company, so we prioritize appointments on time. I'd like to say every time. We are extremely punctual. We are in a constant pursuit of perfection with that, but we do realize that people have important decisions that need to be made between coaching sessions. So we do open up our email and voicemail channels for that, and then your coach will respond between coaching sessions, usually within a 2-day period as the longest. We do certainly love same-day response times, but there are occasions where the coaches are coaching back-to-back appointments all day long and simply can't respond to you until the next day or two. So just keep that in mind. How many members do we have? So each coach can handle a total of 200. Would we consider a convention of some sort? Yeah, listen, we've been participating in this kind of stuff our entire career, right? It wasn't until recently, just around this time last year, where we said no more, and we've turned down every invitation since. So live audiences was our real bread and butter initially for a decade or more. And it wasn't until a year ago coaching with Kellyanne where through her mentorship, we managed to start isolating our focus to wherever we wanted to be geographically. We didn't have any more obligation. And even invitations that Kevin has given me to come out and fly out to Minnesota, I've gratefully declined. It's just not something that we've had much interest in doing. If we were to do a convention, we would possibly do something here in town because we like to stay close by. I'm not big into traveling professionally anymore. I like to have freedom of mobility, and travel for work doesn't feel free to me. So that's my own opinion.
I think they want you to put on one.
I know, I see that, but that would mean it would probably be here because I'm probably not going to travel. I did put one on a year and a half ago. We did have a conference here in Denver. So, yeah. So I don't know.
Stay tuned.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe. Thanks for the question. We'd love to get you guys there if we do. Ryan Hansen, is there a difference between using a debt weapon to pay $10,000 each 5 months or just using his $2,000 net cash flow and make an additional payment every month? Yeah, we get this question all the time. I mean, this is probably the single most asked question I've had since learning different mechanisms for accelerating the elimination of mortgages. And there are roughly half a dozen different ways to accelerate the elimination of a loan, of a mortgage. So $10,000, yeah, the difference is more substantial towards lump sum payments and paycheck parking. But again, I don't personally care about the mathematical evidence of which is best as much as I care about which one I'm consistently capable of sticking with. If I'm incapable of consistency, it really doesn't matter which one is mathematically best. So what you have to try and figure out is which one are you going to actually stick with? My experience is this. If I asked 100 people in a row, are you aware that you would pay your loan off faster if you applied more principal to the payment every month? 100 people would say yes. And if I ask, are you aware that if you applied extra principal every month, then not only would it be paid off faster, but you'd save a ton of money in interest costs? 100 people would say yes. Now, out of those same 100 people, if all of them reached out for us, how many of them do you think are already doing that? How many people, just in your general circle of influence, do you think are actually applying extra money to their mortgage payments every single month to pay it down faster than 30 years? The answer is very few. From my experience, and of course we have a certain demographic that finds our information appealing, so it's somewhat jaded, but from my experience, we're talking about low single digits as far as people that are actually actively, consistently paying down their mortgage every single month. It's so much easier to have that money work elsewhere. So for me, using lump sum payments and paycheck parking as a technique to accelerating debt elimination has allowed me to stay more consistent with the system and form better habits. Matthew Andrews, I want to get my first debt weapon and get my feet wet. What is a good example of an entry-level debt weapon option to get started with? My goal is to own real estate to increase cash flow. I mean, most people have debt weapons already and don't realize it. Credit cards are considered debt weapons. You've got to go back and watch the debt weapon video that we produced a couple weeks back because it will further help clarify the diversification of these accounts. These accounts are any tool that helps you increase your cash flow in general, whether that's a hard money loan, whether that's a conventional mortgage, whether that's a credit card, whether that's a line of credit, whether that's a secured line or an unsecured line, whether that's an infinite banking insurance policy, whether that's cash in the bank or some other type of retirement account that you can leverage into. Self-directed IRAs can be a terrific type of debt weapon. The idea here is growth of assets and minimization of liabilities. That's how you grow cash flow. Make more money, spend less money. That's it. The only two ways to do it. But there are subsequently, arguably infinite ways to make more money and spend less money. So combining all of those possibilities together is going to be really important. First best debt weapon depends on where you are right now at this stage of your life. Are we trying to build your credit? Obviously, your end goal is to own real estate, but I have no idea where you are with respect to that starting point. So unfortunately, Matthew, I'm unable to answer more specifically your question, and I would recommend getting a coaching session. All right, Rafael Perez, what do you think about using new debt to pay off old debt? Is doing that bad for your credit scores? Congrats on 100,000. Thank you. I appreciate that. So what do you think about using new debt to pay off old debt? Yeah, we do it all the time. We use new debt to pay off old debt a lot. Using new debt and acquiring new debt will typically have a short-term, temporary negative impact on your credit because you end up with an inquiry and you end up with an account that doesn't have a lot of history. So the lack of seasoning on that account is going to work against your scores. So again, I think building up strong borrowing strength to minimize the negative impact of acquiring new capital is a very important part of this process. In addition to that, then of course it makes sense. One of the most commonly used strategies, of course, is transferring balances from higher interest. Looks like we're on a low battery warning on that, Mike. Transferring low balance, what does it say, 20 or 10? 10%. Guys, we're down to 10%, so we're going to end up having to wrap up this conversation real quickly. Transferring from high interest credit card accounts to low interest 0% introductory periods is a terrific strategy that many, many people rely on. Of course, you're going to have to compare and contrast which options are available to you. I used $35,000 worth of low or 0% rather interest promotional periods last year. Talked about that in a video where I was discussing dropping the credit scores temporarily in order to skyrocket them just 6 or 8 months down the road in order to get access to a new debt weapon account. So there's a lot of strategic manipulation that's taking place, but while pursuing those 0% introductory periods, I was very, very keen, of course, on we were searching for 0% balance transfer costs as well. So we managed to transfer $35,000 getting 0% balance transfers and 0% interest rates. So of course, that would be a functionally very effective approach to using new money to pay off old, but there are many different examples of that. All right, guys, I'm seeing lots and lots of questions. Yeah.
So so we can actually charge it while it's mic'd up.
Oh, okay. We can throw a charger in. What's that?
Do you have a charger in here? Or charger here?
I don't think I do. I do. All right, guys, we're going to try and charge. We're filming on an iPad. I'm going to try and get that charged while we're talking, so I don't have to turn away all these questions. We're probably going to end up having to wrap up in about 15 minutes either way. I know I promised you guys kind of an endless stream here, but I may have overpromised, and I apologize for that because I didn't realize we were going to be here for hours and hours. All right, Albert Moorhead, how do you respond to those who argue paying off a mortgage isn't a good idea due to first, tax write-offs for interest, and second, the time value of money? What's up, Albert? How you doing, friend? Great question. Great question. There are arguments for both sides of this. I think Kevin and I don't necessarily share viewpoints on the subject of whether or not it makes great sense to pay off. And there's going to be a little wiggle over there while Mike is plugging you guys in, so just bear with it.
Sorry, my AC goes out in the middle of the day. AC.
Oh, nice. That's going to feel good. These lights are scorching us. Can you feel the heat?
Is that where that's coming from?
Yeah.
I thought it was like the
It's just me.
100-degree weather
It's
outside.
just me. All right, so Albert, I think most people on this channel understand that my perspective is a simultaneous action plan of not accepting and subscribing to long-term 30-year payoff periods will serve people well for a number of different reasons, some psychological and some, of course, mathematical. All I have to do is revisit the experience we all went through a decade ago, right? So 10 years ago, we're all diving headfirst into a recession. I had a lot of close people to me lose a lot. I had very successful people that I was mentored by, people that I looked up to who were incredibly successful, lose everything. 100% of people who file bankruptcy have debt. That is a Dave Ramsey classic right there. And I agree. The debt is the problem. The debt's going to be the problem and the cause of the next downturn. Having unprecedented student loan, auto loan, credit card, national, and mortgage balances, creates this kind of perfect storm, which if you look at all of those bullet points in the last downturn, contributed heavily towards it. So I would argue that debt is both the key ingredient to wealth creation when used as leverage, but simultaneously to that, the exact reason why people get into problems. And so for me, looking at a balance between that Robert Kiyosaki and Dave Ramsey collection or spectrum of philosophies, you've got kind of both sides of that spectrum on the extremes, and finding a way to blend it in the middle effectively for myself and then individually do that case by case with each coaching member is critical. And every single person will manage how they do things and achieve success differently. But if you do find yourself up to your eyeballs in debt and you're not managing things well enough to grow substantial amounts of cash flow in the process, you can end up in some real trouble if anything unexpected happens and you're all of a sudden trying to service balances that you can't afford. All of a sudden, it will be this vicious cycle of having to rob Peter to pay Paul, and you get further and further and further into debt until you just can't dig your way out of it. So my recommendation on that, Albert, is to definitely accomplish both, but do so on a level that works individually for your specific plan. Because you ask great questions, time value of money and tax purposes, both worth consideration, but certainly not a sure thing. It doesn't mean I'm just going to keep borrowing and speculating returns and ignore the money I'm borrowing. That's the rich dad approach to things, and that doesn't work for me. Not given the unpredictable, unstable economic conditions, which I nor any of us here on the channel have any control over. Cesar Munoz, what's up, Cesar? Good to see you, buddy. Process of buying a house didn't appraise. Originally we were overpaying by $20K. What should the play be? Sale was $396, appraised at $375. It's a flip. Do I offer the appraisal value or go in over. I could close in 2 weeks, but seller is being somewhat greedy. What do you think of that?
Let me take that. I don't know that I totally understand. Do you understand that the Caesar is buying?
No, I
the
think
house
he's-
to flip?
No, oh, I see, seller is being greedy.
Oh, he's in the process of buying it
Oh,
Buying a house.
oh, in the process, sorry, there was an M in front of that, Caesar, it says min process,
so
okay.
he's
In
buying
process of buying a
from
house, house didn't
investor
appraise,
without
originally we were overpaying by 20. What should be the play be? Sale was 396, it appraised at only 375. It's a flip, so he's digging into the 20K in ARV after repair value on this.
If I could.
Yeah, I want you to take this.
Real estate is the only commodity that I know that is not a free market. So we're talking about somebody else's opinion influencing the value. And that's what we're talking about here. If it's worth it to you to pay the higher price, then that's the value. I wouldn't put too much weight on somebody else's opinion. With that said, you want a good deal, so I would definitely try to leverage, here it goes leverage again. I would try to leverage that individual's opinion to get a better deal on the real estate. But yeah, I mean, if it's a home that you want, it's one that you're living in, it's not going to be an investment for you.
Leave the questions until we don't answer them.
I thought I understood it as somebody else flipped it and he's buying it.
Oh, okay.
But maybe I read that wrong. What's going on here?
Do we still have it? No, we don't have, oh, here it is.
Here's the
Oh,
problem. Here's what's going to happen. If you choose not to buy it because the appraisal came in too low, that seller is going to have a challenge selling that again for a higher price. It's usually the first contract you get on a piece of real estate's the best one, and I'm sure he's just playing hardball here because he wants the extra 20 grand. So I would definitely leverage the appraisal report that you got and try to get the best deal you can for yourself. With that said, if it's a house that you really want and you need to come up from the appraisal a little bit, I wouldn't be afraid to do that.
Okay. At what point does he walk?
I mean, it's an emotional decision when we talk about real estate. Real estate's a very emotional asset. If it's an investment, you're paying way too much anyway. I wouldn't buy that deal if this was an investment for you, but we don't know if
No,
this
it's
is.
a flip.
So what does that mean? Is he buying a house to flip?
Yeah, he's buying it to flip it.
Yeah.
He's going to flip it.
Correct.
Oh, then I'd walk away. I mean, these numbers don't make any sense to me.
Right, I mean, he's overpaying by 20 grand already. I
If you're going to buy it I'm assuming fix and flip, you need to be 75% of the value into the deal, purchase and repairs, and you're paying full price. I don't even know how you profit on that. I must be missing something.
well, obviously ARV, we don't know what ARV is.
Well, so
We
this,
got 396 as the sales price. It appraised at 375 today. So he's planning on fixing and flipping it.
and knowing what I know about appraisals and appraisers, they are influenced by contracts, so he was probably reaching for that 375. Somebody else might come in even lower than that.
I know. I mean, the appraiser, obviously, most appraisers are trying to get the deal done. Like he said, they're influenced by contracts. If your contract.
You got a buyer and you got a
396,
seller. I mean,
right.
that should be the value.
Right.
But
So it's arguably worth less than 375. I don't know if I would take it.
Yeah, I'd pass. Based on what I know, I don't know enough to actually give that advice, but based on what I'm reading here, I would pass on that one.
Mystery
What do you-
Traveler,
what
what's
do you
going
think?
on? Yeah, what do you think?
I always looked at, I mean, assuming it's an investment, I would look at it as the money is made when you buy, right? Like, that's where you get it at the
I
value.
want to get to everybody. So certain people were,
Yeah, you should pass it on. Circle.
oh, gotcha.
The money is made when you buy, so that's where the value is. If you overpay at the buy, you got a deal, but you'll be regretting it when you go to sell and you are 20,000 down. The other thing I would do is look at the surrounding homes in the neighborhood. If you're in a market where you're in a neighborhood where the value around you is 350, 360, 375, then you got no chance. If you're in a neighborhood where the homes are $500,000 and you can get to a higher repair value by doing certain things, then maybe if your lender works. But I don't know, I'd walk away. If I'm understanding it
Yeah,
correctly.
based on what we know. It's hard because we don't know all the information. We don't know how much the repair budget is.
Right.
We don't know
Right.
Right.
the value.
Right.
fixed.
We don't know ARV on that. But yeah, hopefully, Caesar, that at least gives you a cause for pause. All right, Mitchell Evans again. Mitchell, there was a video posted before where someone purchased 22 properties in 20 months and cash flowed over 10K a month. Is this realistic for an average but aggressive student with VIP? Absolutely not. That is Josh Hansen and Scott McCormick. Josh Hansen's a CPA. That video was done, that's called Real Estate Investing 101. That was actually a Charles Roberts video. Shoot, we forgot to call Charles. He's probably just sitting on standby right now. Anyway, no, that's not common. It's not typical. That's an anomaly, and it can happen. It can happen with anybody. I'm also an anomaly of using these techniques myself, too. Most people do not convert these techniques into 7 figures a year. People over time can realistically expect to convert these techniques into $10,000 per month, because I'm not quite sure how to do it any easier than properly leveraging and managing your credit. If you're not properly managing your credit and leveraging well, then getting to $10,000 a month in any investment strategy is going to only become more difficult. This is the easier, faster, less expensive approach to getting where you want to end up foundationally. So whether it takes you, if it takes you 2 years, it probably would have taken you 5, 6, 7, 10. If it takes you 5 years, it probably would have taken you 25. So at the end of the day, this is just a shortcut. Good question, and I want to be always realistic about it, because you say average but aggressive student. What would you say is closer to possible for an aggressive student with VIP? Again, it's a shortcut. So what's typical is somebody taking a 30-year loan and paying it off in as close to 5 years as possible. Sometimes it's 8, sometimes it's 10, sometimes it's 1, sometimes it's 3. We have a very close friend that we've talked about on this channel a number of times, who's been gracious and generous and open about his financial circumstances, which is the only reason that I share his circumstances openly on the channel, is because he's permitted it. But since coaching together, we've purchased over 80 houses, single-family homes in and around Denver Metro, all worth substantially more than what he bought them for over the downturn period. He's been buying less frequently over the last year and two. Prior to that, even upwards of 3 years ago, something like 15 properties in 1 year. Absolutely achievable. Again, so much of this is outside of my control. I have absolutely no control whether you buy 1 property or whether you buy 100 properties. That has nothing to do with VIP and coaching. That's everything to do with your follow through, as well as your building a team that's capable of managing 100 properties or even just 1. You still need a team just to do 1 property. You need a great mortgage person. Likely you're going to have a great real estate agent. You're going to need a title crew. You're going to have it appraised. Those are all separate roles. So that exponentially becomes more necessary with every property you do. I don't have any control over any of those things. What I do have control over is helping advise on things that you may not have seen for yourself. That comes down to both opportunities as well as mistakes that you want to prevent. So, having an extra set of eyes is valuable, of course, in helping you identify the decisions you want to be making within those questions. But again, there is no real such thing as typical, other than people seeing more opportunity and avoiding more mistakes. And that in and of itself is worth many times over the cost of tuition for this coaching relationship. Mystery Traveler, what's happening, man? Mystery Travel. I'm seeing some people won some gift cards coming up here. $25 gift cards being given out every week on this channel. Make sure you stay tuned for those. Make sure you're a subscriber to be one. What do you look for when investing in rental properties? Cap rate, cash on cash return, percentages, income per door, unit, etc. What are you guys normally looking for?
I mean, real estate is a numbers business, so I don't want to shy away from that, but there's so much more to it than this. If you're buying newer houses in new neighborhoods, you're probably easier to manage those, so your return doesn't need to be quite as high. If you're investing in your own backyard, if you're investing out of state, there's so many variables to answer that, but I don't want to cop out either. I would focus mostly on the cash flow and your cash on cash return. Of course, leverage plays a huge role in that. But if you're cash flowing and you're in a good loan, you can withstand the ups and downs. So that's where I think you and I disagree a little bit. I think it's safe. You could be you could leverage your properties and be aggressive and grow and be safe about it. It's when you're getting into adjustable rate loans and interest only loans and all the creative stuff that they were doing back before '08 and '09 that got people into trouble. So I guess, does that help? Cash on cash and cash flow. If you're cash flowing, you're going to be fine no matter what the market does.
That's exactly right. Cash flow is the name of the game. Speculated appreciation is garbage.
Same answer.
Agree.
Cash flow.
Cool. All right. All right, guys. We got just a few more here, and then I'm going to get you all back to your day. Oh, man, I see a 16-year-old in here. That's incredible. All right. Let's see what we got here, guys. Oh, man. The list is long. All right, let's go with this one. I'm 16, turning 17. I want to get my credit started. What would be the best way to start? I've already started working a part-time and started to save money. Good for you, Alec. That's awesome, man.
That's great.
Obviously, you need to start building your credit once you turn 18 years old. You can become an authorized user at 18 on accounts that are even older than you and adopt the entire history of that account, which is pretty incredible. I think that's a terrific cheat. In addition to that, I would say just getting your first few accounts. Most credit card companies are, they're excited about getting new borrowers because they want you to mismanage your money. The key is borrowing responsibly. If you have any concerns about being fiscally responsible, which it sounds like you're really starting off in a great position. I mean, to even be on this channel in the first place at 17 years old is really phenomenal. So I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic that you'll be using this responsibly, which means you're not using anything on your credit card account that you weren't already going to be buying with cash already, and you're paying your credit card balance in full every single month. At no point in time should you be allowing that credit card balance to revolve at this particular stage of your life. Going out and building out to 2 or 3 credit card accounts, at some point, if you do have an intention of purchasing a vehicle, even financing a small amount of that vehicle with the intention of paying it off in just a few months in order to diversify the types of accounts that are on your credit report is very important. Having the right type of mixture of accounts is very important for you. So that would be my recommendation. You have to have credit and use it responsibly to grow great credit. All right. Guys, we're going to have to come back to a lot of these questions. We'll do it on a separate video. Just wanting to make sure that, we wrap this up and none of these important ones are left hanging. Guys, hey, I really appreciate all your participation. We love every one of you so much. Just to get these guys back to their day and to give Kevin his house back, we're in an hour and a half on this thing already. Wait, are we 2 hours in already? All right, we're 2 hours in already. Boy, this has been a blast. I don't know why I waited so long to do this. So we'll see you at 250,000 subscribers, guys. We'll do another one of these in 150,000. No, I'm kidding. We'll do another one here soon. And in fact, I'm going to come back in. We'll address a lot of these questions. I'll just make a video and kind of flow through these, and maybe we'll do another live one here. Maybe we'll even do this once a month, just because it's obvious you have a lot of them. There is also the plan of creating and building out a Facebook page for our existing coaching members. It'll be a closed membership, but anybody that's an existing coaching member will have access to the community in order for you guys to all be communicating and talking about different lending products and various success stories you're having so that other people can learn from that. I think that will be huge for us to leverage each other. So be on the lookout for that over the coming months. I'm assuming that by the end of this year, we'll have that up and running. All right, guys, I want to say thank you again so much for helping us achieve this milestone, 100,000 subscribers. I would have never thought it was possible. Hey, Mike, why don't you come over here and say hi to everybody? I want to introduce Mike. Michael is really the huge reason that we're here. In December of 2016, we made the conscious decision to really start concentrating on you guys, our cash flower community here on YouTube. And I went through 4 individuals that were helping me with that project, people that were really experienced. I'm not a YouTuber, guys. And guess what? As of this summer, when people ask me what I do, I say I'm a YouTuber now. So I completely converted my entire line of work as a result of this guy right here, Mr. Michael Simon. And Michael is just, he's the entire reason that we had our first viral video. We went from 15,000 subscribers in August all the way to this 100,000 mark in, boy, I don't know, 9 months, 90,000 subscribers in 365 days. And Mike is just an animal. And this is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about bringing in a team. You know, I'm talking about bringing in the Joes, and I'm talking about bringing in the Mikes, and I'm talking about surrounding yourself with other great resources that can create value for and from you. And if you're somebody that can bring great value, and you're somebody that is capable of identifying good value that you can receive, you just can't lose. If you're receiving great value and you're bringing great value, you end up with what's called a mutual exchange of value. And Mike was somebody that was willing to grow with this channel. He believed in it. We had some success. We had made hundreds of thousands. In fact, we had already earned over $1 million off of this channel over the first 6 years. And Mike came in and said, I see the unbelievable potential with this thing. We're on a $4 million pace with just this one channel alone. This year alone, $4 million. Guys, this goes to show you what is possible out there. You don't have to look at the conventional way of making money anymore. You can make money in many different ways and chase what you believe in the most. I believe in helping people and being there, standing next to folks, and that's why I can turn away every single person I speak with during the day and not take money and not care one bit that I didn't take that money, because we know that by bringing value and exchanging mutual value, that it'll eventually turn around. And Mike came in and was willing to work with us for $13 an hour originally, did that for 3 months' time, and you know, he's a six-figure earner at this point, and it's because he was willing to prove his worth, and it became a mutual exchange of value for us too. So I would leave that with you as well as we wrap this up. Look for creating mutual exchanges of value in your life. Surround yourself with people who are trying to up-level you. Surround yourself with people that you admire, people that you look up to, people that have achieved tremendous amounts of success in their field, and be selective. And that's not always easy to do. I have some really, really close friends and family members that I love from a greater distance than I once did, because they weren't influencing where we were trying to head positively. So make sure that those people do that for you. Mike, anything you want to add about the channel?
Keep watching the videos.
Stay tuned, guys. We really appreciate you. Become subscribers. Drop a like on this if you want us to do more videos like this, these live Q&As. If this is something you've enjoyed, please let us know. We'd really like to know that. And otherwise, we'll see you on the next video. Until then, make it a great day. Take care.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate you both.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Well.
Be careful what I say.